Welcome to the Echoes of Ihsan podcast. Today, we're diving deep into a fascinating subject, the traditions and practices surrounding the two Eids in Islam. We're going deep with the primary source, the Muwatta Imam Malik, specifically Book 10, which focuses entirely on the two Eids.
Oh, it's an incredible text. It gives us this direct line to the earliest days of Islam, showing how the companions of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, observed these important holidays.
It's like a time machine. And right off the bat, there's this surprising detail about the call to prayer. The Adha, the beautiful call that usually summons people to gather for prayer.
Exactly what's remarkable is that according to Imam Malik, there has been no adhan or iqama for Eid al-Fitr or Eid al-Adha since the time of the Prophet. This is the established sunnah with no disagreement among scholars.
Hold on, so for these major celebrations, there's no formal call to gather. That's wild. It makes you wonder, what does that say about how ingrained these holidays were in the community's life?
It's a powerful statement. The obligation and enthusiasm to attend Eid prayers were so deeply rooted that a formal summons wasn't necessary. Everyone simply knew it was part of their shared understanding.
Okay, so if there's no adhan, how did people know when and where to gather, especially in those early days?
That's where the strength of the community comes in. While there's no formal adhan knowledge of the prayer times and designated prayer grounds was widespread, think about it, even today in many Muslim communities, news about Eid prayer arrangements spreads organically through families' mosques and local networks.
It's a fascinating example of how tradition and communal knowledge have this living, breathing role in Islam. It's not just about the written rules.
Yeah.
So no adhan, but what about getting ready for Eid prayer? What does the Muwatta tell us about that?
Well, we learn that Abdullah ibn Umar, a close companion of the Prophet, would perform ghusl before going to prayer for Eid al-Fitr.
Ghusl, the full ritual bath.
Right.
It's like a spiritual cleansing before joining the community for this special occasion.
Precisely, it signifies a fresh start, a purification of the body and soul, preparing oneself not just physically, but spiritually, to stand in prayer with their community.
Now, the text specifically mentions Abdullah ibn Umar doing this for Eid al-Fitr, the Eid that marks the end of Ramadan. Does that mean it's only for that Eid?
While the specific narration mentions Eid al-Fitr performing ghusl before Eid prayers is generally recommended for both Eids, it's a way of honoring the sacredness of the day and approaching the prayer with a heightened sense of purity and intention.
I can see how that elevates the entire experience. Okay, so we've prepared ourselves. We've gathered now. What happens during the Eid prayer itself?
Here's where it gets really interesting. According to the Muwatta the Prophet, as well as the first two caliphs, Abu Bakr and Umar would pray before the khutbah, the sermon, on both Eid days.
Wait, so the prayer comes first. That's different from the usual Friday prayer where the khutbah comes before the prayer.
Exactly, and this distinction highlights the central importance of prayer in the Eid celebration. It's a powerful statement on these special days. The focus is on directly communing with God, on offering our gratitude and devotion through prayer before receiving any further guidance or instruction.
So it's not just about listening to a sermon. It's about embodying the act of prayer as the heart of the celebration. That actually makes a lot of sense. But speaking of variations, I'm curious about this exception made by the third Caliph Uthman ibn Affan. The text mentions something specific he did for people living in the outlying areas of Medina.
Yes, Uthman, known for his wisdom and practicality, recognized the challenges faced by those living far from the main mosque in Medina, so he offered them flexibility. They could either wait for the Friday prayer, Jumu'ah, after the Eid prayer, fulfilling both obligations at once, or they could return home after Eid.
It's fascinating how he considered the community's needs, especially those on the outskirts, and offered them a practical solution within the bounds of Islamic teachings.
It's a great example of how Islamic law can be applied with flexibility and understanding. Uthman's decision emphasizes that while the principles remain constant, the application of those principles can be adapted to accommodate different circumstances without compromising the spirit of the law.
That's a really important nuance to understand. Now let's talk about something that's always on people's minds during Eid. Food.
Ah, yes, a key element of the celebration. But did you know there's a distinct difference between the two Eids when it comes to eating before the prayer?
I actually didn't. Tell me more.
The Muwatta makes it clear that for Eid al-Fitr, the Eid following Ramadan, it was customary to eat something before going to prayer. This was a deliberate act, contrasting with the month-long fast of Ramadan. But for Eid al-Adha, the Eid of sacrifice, it was not considered obligatory to eat before prayer.
Okay, that's intriguing. So for Eid al-Fitr, breaking the fast is interwoven with the very start of the celebration.
Yeah.
But for Eid al-Adha, it's not as central.
Exactly. It highlights the unique nature of each Eid. Eid al-Fitr marks the joyous culmination of Ramadan. So eating signifies a return to normalcy, a celebration of gratitude for completing the fast. But Eid al-Adha centers around the sacrifice commemorating Prophet Ibrahim's willingness to sacrifice his son.
So each Eid has its own distinct focus and spirit that makes a lot of sense. But what happens once the prayer actually starts? What can we learn from the Muwatta about the recitation during Eid prayers?
We have a specific account from Umar ibn al-Khattab, one of the most prominent companions of the Prophet. He sought guidance about what the Prophet recited during Eid prayers.
What a great example of how the companions were so eager to learn from the Prophet's example and preserve his practices. So what was the answer? What did Umar learn?
He was told that the Prophet would recite Surah Qaf, the 50th chapter of the Quran, and Surah Al-Inshiqaq, the 84th chapter.
I love those specific details. It paints such a vivid picture. Those surahs deal with some pretty profound themes. God's power, the day of judgment. It adds another layer of depth to the prayer, doesn't it?
Absolutely, the choice of surahs is deliberate and meaningful. Surah Qaf, with its powerful imagery and reminders of God's majesty, sets the tone for a day of reflection on our relationship with the divine. And Surah Al-Inshiqaq, with its vivid descriptions of the Day of Judgment, reminds us of our ultimate accountability and the importance of living a life of righteousness.
It's not just going through the motions of prayer, it's about engaging with those profound concepts right in the heart of the celebration. Now, another thing that always feels special during Eid prayers are the takbirs, those extra declarations of Allahu Akbar, God is great. What does the Muwatta tell us about how those were done?
Yes, the takbirs. They add a unique grandeur to the Eid prayers, emphasizing the greatness of God and elevating these prayers above our regular daily prayers. We learn from the Muwatta that Abu Huraira, another companion of the Prophet, would say Allahu Akbar 7 times in the first rak'ah, the first unit of prayer before reciting from the Quran, and then 5 times in the second rak'ah before the recitation.
So it's not just that we're saying Allahu Akbar. More often it's woven into the very structure of the prayer at these specific points. I imagine that creates a very powerful atmosphere.
Absolutely. It's a carefully choreographed act of worship where every movement and utterance has meaning. By incorporating the takbirs at those specific intervals, the prayer takes on a rhythm and grandeur unique to Eid. It's a powerful reminder that this is not just an ordinary day, but a day of heightened spiritual significance.
I can see how those details would really create a sense of awe and reverence. Now, I'm curious about what the Muwatta says about praying before and after the Eid prayer itself. Is there anything specific about that?
Yes, and this is where we see some interesting variations in practice among the early Muslims, reminding us that there isn't always a single prescribed way. For example, Abdullah ibn Umar, known for his strict adherence to the Prophet's Sunnah, did not pray any extra prayers before or after the Eid prayer.
So for him, the Eid prayer was the complete and central act of worship for that day.
Exactly. He saw no need for additional prayers, emphasizing the sufficiency of the Eid prayer itself. But we also see other practices. For example, Sayyid ibn al-Musayyab would pray the Fajr prayer, the morning prayer before sunrise, and then go to the Eid prayer.
So he maintained his regular prayer routine while still observing the special Eid prayer. It shows that there was room for personal piety and different approaches within the overall framework of the Sunnah.
Absolutely. And it encourages us even today to reflect on our own practices and to understand that there isn't always a single right way. The key is to seek knowledge, understand the reasoning behind different approaches, and make informed decisions about our own religious practice.
That's a really important reminder. So we've covered the preparations, the prayer itself. Now, what about that final element, the khutbah, the sermon? What does the Muwatta tell us about that?
Well, according to Imam Malik, as soon as the Imam reaches the prayer ground, the Eid prayer begins, and it's considered proper etiquette to stay and listen to the khutbah after the prayer.
It makes you think about the flow of events, everyone waiting in anticipation, and then that moment when the Imam arrives, signaling the start of the communal prayer, and then the khutbah comes after as a way to conclude the formal part of the celebration.
It's a powerful sequence. The Imam's arrival unifies the community, marking the start of this shared act of worship. And the khutbah then serves as a bridge between the spiritual and the practical, guiding the community on how to apply the lessons of Eid to their daily lives.
It's remarkable how much detail and nuance the Muwatta offers about these celebrations. It really makes you appreciate the depth and richness of Islamic tradition.
It is fascinating, isn't it? And we've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to uncover.
Well, this deep dive is already full of surprises, and I'm eager to keep exploring. Stay tuned, everyone, for part 2 of our deep dive into the Muwatta Imam Malik's insights on the Two Ids.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the Muwatta Imam Malik's insights on the Two Ids.
It's amazing how much we can learn about these celebrations from a text that's centuries old.
It's a testament to the enduring power of tradition and the meticulous scholarship of Imam Malik in capturing these practices.
In part one, we really unpacked the specifics of how the Eid prayers were performed in those early days. But now I'm curious about the bigger picture.
The why behind the what, so to speak.
Exactly. For example, we talked about how Abdullah ibn Umar didn't pray extra prayers before or after Eid. But what does that tell us about how he understood the nature of Eid itself?
That's a great question. It suggests that for Abdullah ibn Umar, the Eid prayer wasn't just one act of worship among many. It held a unique and complete significance. It was the central pillar of the day, encompassing within it the fullness of the celebration.
So it wasn't about adding more prayers, it was about the quality and focus of that specific Eid prayer.
Precisely, and this perspective raises a really interesting point about intentionality in our worship. It's not just about the quantity of actions, but about the presence of mind, the awareness of purpose behind every act.
That's a powerful takeaway. It applies not just to Eid, but to all aspects of our religious practice. Now, another thing that struck me in the Muwatta was the emphasis on community, which seems inherent to how Eid was observed.
Absolutely. From the gathering for prayer to the shared meals, the emphasis on togetherness is undeniable. Remember how Imam Malik highlighted that the Eid prayer commences the moment the Imam arrives.
Yes, it emphasizes this collective experience, the community coming together as one body.
Exactly. And it wasn't just about physical proximity, it was about unity of purpose, shared intention, a collective outpouring of gratitude and devotion.
That sense of unity must have been especially powerful in those early days of Islam, with the community facing so many challenges.
You're right. Eid provided a moment of solidarity, a chance to reaffirm their shared faith and commitment to one another in the face of adversity. And it's a reminder for us today that our strength lies in unity, in supporting and uplifting each other, especially during difficult times.
And speaking of supporting one another, the Muwatta also mentions some interesting practices related to charity and taking care of the less fortunate during Eid, particularly during Eid al-Adha.
Yes, the concept of sharing and generosity is woven into the very fabric of Eid al-Adha, the Eid sacrifice. The act of sacrificing an animal is not just a symbolic ritual, it has a tangible social dimension.
Right. We touched on this earlier, but I'd love to delve a little deeper. The Muwatta talks about how the meat from the sacrifice is divided into three parts.
Exactly. One part is for the family, another for friends and neighbors, and the third is specifically designated for the poor and needy. This division underscores the importance of sharing our blessings with those less fortunate, ensuring that everyone partakes in the joy and abundance of Eid.
It's a beautiful embodiment of Islam's emphasis on social responsibility. It's not just about personal piety, but about extending compassion and care to the wider community.
Precisely. And this act of sharing takes on even greater significance when you consider the historical context of Eid al-Adha. It commemorates Prophet Ibrahim's willingness to sacrifice his son as an act of obedience to God.
That's a profound act of faith and submission. And then to connect that act of sacrifice with giving to the poor as this whole other layer of meaning.
It's a powerful reminder that true sacrifice involves recognizing the needs of others and prioritizing their well-being. It's about extending generosity and compassion to those who may be struggling, especially during a time of celebration.
So it's not just about abstaining from something, it's about actively giving and sharing. It transforms the act of sacrifice from a personal act of worship to a powerful expression of social solidarity.
Exactly, and that brings us to another important aspect of Eid that we haven't explored yet, the element of joy and festivity.
Yes, the Muwatta doesn't just focus on the rituals and legal rulings, it also captures the spirit of celebration that surrounds these holidays.
Remember how we discussed the custom of eating before Eid al-Fitr prayers? That act of breaking the fast is in itself a celebration, a joyous return to normalcy after a month of disciplined fasting.
And it sets the tone for the rest of the day, doesn't it? Eid is a time for families to come together, to wear new clothes, to share delicious food, to exchange gifts. The Muwatta doesn't explicitly detail these customs, but you can sense that spirit of joy and festivity woven throughout the text.
Absolutely. It's in the meticulous descriptions of the prayer. The emphasis on communal gathering, the recognition of variations in practice, it all points to a celebration that engages not just the mind and spirit, but also the heart and senses.
It's a holistic experience, one that embraces both the solemnity of worship and the lightness of celebration.
Exactly. And this reminds us that Islam is not a religion of austerity or deprivation. It's a faith that recognizes the importance of balance, of integrating joy and celebration into our spiritual lives.
And that balance is so beautifully embodied in Eid. It's a reminder that faith and joy, gratitude and generosity can go hand in hand.
Speaking of balance, I think it's important to acknowledge that the Muwatta represents a specific school of thought within Islam. The Maliki school is known for its emphasis on tradition and the practices of the people of Medina.
That's a great point. While the Muwatta provides us with incredible insights, it's essential to remember that other schools of thought may have different interpretations or rulings regarding certain aspects of Eid.
Absolutely. Islam is a vast and diverse tradition with a rich history of scholarship and interpretation. It's important to approach these texts with humility and an understanding that they represent one perspective within a broader spectrum of Islamic thought.
That's a really valuable reminder. We should always strive to learn from different perspectives and to engage in respectful dialogue about these nuanced issues.
Couldn't agree more. It's through this continuous process of learning and engaging with diverse viewpoints that we can deepen our understanding of our faith.
This has been such an insightful discussion. We've gone beyond the surface-level descriptions of rituals and delved into the deeper meanings and principles behind the two Eids.
It's been a fascinating journey through the Muwatta, hasn't it? And as we move into part 3, I'm excited to connect these historical insights to our own experiences of Eid today.
Yes, let's explore how these centuries-old traditions continue to resonate in our lives and shape our understanding of these special celebrations. Welcome back to Echoes of Ihsan. We've been on quite a journey exploring the traditions and deeper meanings of the two Eids through the lens of the Muwatta Imam Malik.
It's been fascinating to trace these practices back to the earliest days of Islam and see how they've shaped our understanding of these celebrations.
Absolutely. And in this final part, I'd love to shift the focus to something a bit more personal.
From the historical to the contemporary, you mean?
Exactly. What does Eid mean to us today in our own lives and experiences? I mean, we can talk all day about what Abdullah ibn Umar did, but what about what resonates with us?
That's a great point. It's important to connect these historical insights to our own lived realities. So let's dive into that personal dimension.
For me, one of the things that always stands out about Eid is that feeling of renewal.
Renewal. Tell me more.
It's like a spiritual reset button, a chance to start fresh, to shed old habits, and to recommit to my goals, both spiritual and personal.
It's almost like a collective exhale after a period of introspection, especially after Ramadan.
Exactly. That's when it's most potent for me, after a month of intense focus on prayer, fasting, and spiritual reflection. Eid al-Fitr feels like a culmination, a celebration of having emerged from that period of growth and refinement.
It's like stepping out into the sunlight after a period of inwardness with a renewed sense of purpose and clarity.
Precisely. And that sense of renewal isn't just individual, it extends outward to relationships to the community as a whole.
Yes, Eid provides this unique opportunity to mend fences, to forgive past transgressions, to strengthen the bonds of family and community.
It's a reminder that holding on to grudges and negativity only weighs us down. Eid offers this chance to let go, to reconcile, and to embrace forgiveness.
It's a powerful reminder that Islam places great emphasis on restoring harmony and maintaining strong social ties. Eid facilitates that in a beautiful way.
Now, expert speaker, I'm curious about what personally resonates with you when you think about Eid.
For me, it's the emphasis on gratitude that always strikes a chord.
Gratitude.
Yes, both Eids, in their own way, call us to pause and appreciate the blessings in our lives. Eid al-Fitr, after a month of fasting, highlights the simple blessings of food and drink, the joy of gathering with loved ones, the gift of community.
It's like we're experiencing those everyday blessings with a heightened awareness, a deeper appreciation after a period of deprivation.
Exactly. And then there's Eid al-Adha, which centers on the act of sacrifice, reminding us of Prophet Ibrahim's willingness to sacrifice his son out of obedience to God.
It's a powerful story that prompts deep reflection on what we're willing to sacrifice for our faith, for our values, for the well-being of others.
Precisely. And connected to that sacrifice is the act of sharing, of distributing the meat from the sacrifice to family, friends, neighbors, and especially the poor and needy.
That's such a tangible expression of gratitude, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is taking our appreciation for what we have and transforming it into action that benefits others.
It's about recognizing that true gratitude isn't just a feeling. It's a way of life, a commitment to sharing our blessings and easing the burdens of others.
It reminds me of that beautiful hadith where the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "The believer's shade on the day of judgment will be his charity."
What a powerful image. It underscores how acts of kindness and generosity, especially those done during times of celebration like Eid, have this lasting impact, not just in this life, but in the hereafter.
It's a reminder that our celebrations shouldn't just be about personal enjoyment, but about extending that joy and generosity outwards, making a positive difference in the lives of others.
And that brings us back to the Muwatta Imam Malik. It's a text that beautifully captures that spirit of balance between individual piety and communal responsibility between ritual observance and heartfelt celebration.
It's been an incredible journey exploring this text and uncovering the layers of meaning embedded in the traditions of the two Eids.
Absolutely. And while the Muwatta offers a specific perspective rooted in the Maliki school of thought, the core principles it highlights resonate across different interpretations and cultures.
That's what's so remarkable about these traditions. They transcend time and place. They offer timeless wisdom and guidance on how to celebrate with intention, with gratitude, and with a deep sense of connection to our faith and our community.
Beautifully said. It's been a true pleasure diving into these topics with you.
Likewise. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Muwatta Imam Malik.
May your Eids be filled with joy, renewal gratitude, and a profound sense of connection to the divine and to one another.
Eid Mubarak.